This is a shir in Likutei Sichos Chelek Yutes, the shir on the month of Elul. Very exciting. It's a short sicha in terms of pages, but it's packed and intense in terms of content. Elul. Says the Rabbi in Ois number Aleph, in eine von the sichas von Chag HaPesach, one of the sichas that the Friedrich Rebbe said on Chag HaPesach. So the Friedrich Rebbe describes the Ruchni's dike scene, was hat geherrscht Shabbos Vorchem Elul in Lubavitch. The Ruchni's dike matzav, the situation that was, geherrscht means ruled, not in this context, it means the situation that was apparent, the atmosphere that was palpable during the Shabbos of Vorchem Elul in the city of Lubavitch. The city of Lubavitch, the Ira Bira, Hauptstadt, the capital city von Kveit Kedushas Admurei Chabad in Meshech von Asach Yoren of the Lubavitcher Rebbes for many generations, for many years. So there, the Friedrich Rebbe describes on a Pesach Sicha the way Shabbos of Vorchem Elul, the atmosphere that prevailed, geherrscht, that's the word, the atmosphere that prevailed in Shabbos of Vorchem Elul. And the Rebbe quotes her in the Sicha from the Sefer HaSichas of the Friedrich Rebbe. The Shabbos of Vorchem Elul in Lubavitch, the Shabbos that blessed the month of Elul, the way it was in Lubavitch, Hagam es fleck noch sein, a klar Sonnenscheinendiker Tag, although it was yet a clear sunshine day, hat sich schon der Avir gebitten, the air changed. Es hat sich schon angegeben, feeling dem Elul Reach, it was already possible to feel the smell of Elul. Es hat schon geblasen, a Tshuva Wind, a wind of Teshuvah blew. And the Rebbe is going to learn meaning into the exact details of this. Because as the Rebbe continues, all the talk and exact wording of the Rebbes, some Rabbi said in Sienu, our Rebbes, our leaders, they are exact in all of their details. So we understand that these four descriptions, which there are in this Sikha, which are, first of all, speak about the clear sunshine day, and then the change of the air, and then number 3, be able to feel the smell of Elul, and number 4, the blowing of a tshuva wind. They're not just similes or not just poetic speech. They actually refer to 4 distinct things that those things express the inner aspect of Shabbos of Vorchem Elul. More than that, not just what was said, but when the Rabbeim spoke, it's also pertinent and it's also important to figure out when they said it. That also has relevance. So in this case, because the Rabbeim, when they said it, that's when it needed to be said, and that's where it has a connection to. Even though that maybe they were speaking about something, and that something continues, it wasn't just for that time. As it's explained in many places, it's something that starts and then continues. However, the time it was started, the time it was discussed, definitely has an importance in the context. And so since Friedrich Rebbe said this description of Shabbos Vorchem Elul on Pesach, so we understand that there's a pnimiyisdik connection, there's an inside connection, inner connection between these two times. So, jumping onto that connection between Pesach and Elul, says the Rebbe, lecher is legami nit verstandig, it would seem totally not understood. Why? Because when we look at these two times, Shabbos Vorchem Elul and Pesach, they are not just different in their content. They're actually opposites. They're opposites one for the other. Why? In of Pesach, its whole context is Hamshacham and Mailamata, drawing down from above to below. Which, to put it in the well-known aphorism, the well-known Rashi Tevis, Ani lidoidi v'doidi li. So Ani lidoidi is I turn to Hashem, Hashem turns to me. In Pesach it was the exact opposite. Doidi li, Hashem turns to me, v'ani lo, and I turn to him. As we know that the Geula from Mitzrayim came not through something that the Yidden did. We'll address this soon in the Ha'aras, if you're having a question. It's not about what the Yidden did. It's rather because we know that Chazal tell us before the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, the Malachim said, who should we save? These ones, the Egyptians are idolatrous. We know we can't choose them, but the other ones, the Jewish people, were also idolatrous. So obviously their redemption didn't come because of their great achievements. So why did the redemption come if Pesach was in a way of a an arousal from above? Which aroused thereafter the fact that Yidden then became inspired to go running and turning to Hashem. Generally speaking, they did Sfira Sa'ima, then they accepted the Torah. But the gate was opened by Hashem, who rained down, who opened the light of redemption and pulled them out. This is totally different than the month of Elul. The month of Elul is a time of Aveda in a way of Milmata L'Mayla, from below going upwards. First, Ani L'Doidi, Elul, Ani L'Doidi, I turn to God, to my beloved, which is Isarus L'Sata, and arousal from below. And only afterwards, there's the Isarus L'Leil, the arousal from above, Doidi Li, then Hashem reciprocates to me. And that makes up the month of Elul. So we have to understand, how is there any relevance on Pesach that the Rebbe should speak about Shams Varchim Elul? So just let's go back. I know you're itching to ask, what do you mean Yetzias Mitzrayim didn't come because of anything the Bnei Yisrael did? So says the Rebbe, first of all, in Orah 5, not just that unbelievable aspect of revelation about which it says that Hashem didn't use any intermediaries, any malachs, but he came totally himself. Not just was that obviously not pull downable, was that not elicitable through Aveda, because the Aveda, anything a created being can do, can't reach that. But beyond that, even regular Aveda, even regular things that a created being could do, that they also didn't know, because we know that the Medrash says they were also on some level idolatrous. You will ask, says Orah 7, but we know that Chazal say that there was a mitzvah, they had the Emunah. Chazal tell us that B'schar ha'emunah, the merit of the faith that they had to leave Egypt, that's why the Yidden left Egypt. Says the Rebbe, but don't get so excited about that as being something they bring to the table, because Emunah is an inheritance from our fathers. Inheritance. The definition of inheritance is that you get it, you didn't work for it. Also, you say, well, they did the bris and they did the Pesach, Dam Milah, Dam Pesach, and that in that schus, in that merit, they were revealed. So says the Rebbe, no, but that also is actually just actualizing the faith that they already had. The faith that they had inherently and hereditarily, they now actualized it by fulfilling what Hashem wanted, circumcising and Pesach. But it wasn't totally something they created, which is not the case which we're talking about in the month of Elul, which is tshuva. Tshuva is something which the person from below gets aroused. And it's not just fulfilling things that have already been drawn down from above and just unpacking them, which is how the Rebbe describes here, the fact that they did the bris and the Pesach. Yes, it was a schus for them, but really it emanated from an inherent and hereditary belief that they have, which is a gilim l'mayla. So really, the whole notion of going out of Mitzrayim is more of a Isarus L'Leil Hashem, pulling them out, the arousal from above, which is the entire the antithesis of the month of Elul, which is all about Ani L'Doidi, the arousal from below. Base. So the explanation is, it's known, as our sages tell us on the pasuk. It's a pasuk in Iyov Mikdimani V'Ashalim. The pasuk says, Mikdimani V'Ashalim, who precedes me and I pay? Who is like me that precedes and pays? In the pasuk, the Medrash explains this pasuk. It says, yes, I asked you for a space on your door to put a mezuzah, right? But first I gave you a house. Yes, I asked you for 10% of your profits, but first I gave you money. And so it is. If you look at all the mitzvahs, Hashem first gave us the thing, then He asks us to pay. So this is the way that pasuk is interpreted. Mi Yikdimani V'Ashalem, who's like me that first proceeds to first, I first give and then I ask for payment. I think that's the way the pasuk is read. But on that pasuk, our Chazal tell us that even the fact that a Yid can, even the fact that a Yid, when a Yid wants to go do a mitzvah, there's a problem. The Yetzer Hara wants to stop him. Not just for that he needs Hashem's help. Even in general, that a created being should be able to achieve something through his service to Hashem, it's just because Hashem gives him the koyach. Who's a created being to be able to do something that creates pleasure for Hashem? So it's Hashem giving him that opportunity. However, after that arousal from above, Hashem embeds within him that energy and power, then Hashem allows him to do it, so to speak, on autopilot, to do it on his own accord, to do it from Isarus L'Sata, to do it from arousal from below. As Alter Rebbe explains, that Elul is the time when it's not, on the one hand, it's us becoming aroused from above, and on the other hand, first of all, there's these galus, the revelation of Yud Gimel Midas Rachim, the 13 attributes of mercy. And Alter Rebbe gives a very clear mashal of this, of a king who's in the field, And when the king, before he goes back to the palace, is in the kilt and his smiley faces, as all the length of the mashal the Alter Rebbe gives, everybody is able to approach him. Everybody's able to go and receive his face, be able to receive him. And in other words, so that shiny countenance, that approachability that Hashem presents to us, that's already arousal from above. So in other words, even though we're talking the whole time that we turn to Hashem, it's from below above, it's in a way, nonetheless, there needs to be the power for this has to be given from above, which is revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy. So that's a power given, permission granted, and power given from above. And afterwards, the Yid, so to speak, self-starts after you've filled up his tank with gas. Then he ignites. But Hashem has already given him the power. So we understand that, we have to understand it, that there's Isaros L'Sata. So it really starts, so let's see what the Rebbe says in the next paragraph. So we understand, as the that once what happens is Hashem first sends down the first radiance, which gives the power for the Yid to now become aroused from below, and now the Yid draws down another Yisrus L'Leil. Hashem rains down a new arousal from above. So that's a higher. The subsequent Yisrus L'Leil that comes after the Aveda of us below is higher than the initial introductory arousal from above, which gives us the power to be able to come to the table. Why? Because since the original Yisrus L'Leil arousal comes in a way unearned, it's called Chesed Chinam, the free, unearned benevolence of Hashem. So therefore, by definition, it's a hamshach, it's rolling down from a level that's called Chitzonius Ha'or, the external level of light. Masha'enkin, though, where we talk about the hamshach, the drawing down of the Yisrus L'Leil, the arousal from above that comes, that proceeded through our efforts, since Hashem has a deep vested interest in our deeds, as it says, Hashem desires the deeds of your hand. In other words, the deeds of created being are very meaningful to him. So he has a true innermost interest in our deeds. So b'meila, what's aroused through the deed from below, and then Hashem reciprocates by sending down a light from above, that's already from Pnimius, that's already from his pure direct interest, because that's what he really wants. And comes from his Pnimius. But we also understand, we also have to understand that das, was Yisrus L'Sata hat von Keach zum Eres an Yisrus L'Eila, nimmt sich das von der Friedrich Yisrus L'Eila, the fact that our arousal from below has the power to draw down this Pnimius is because we got the drawing down from above that Hashem initiated. And even though that the Nesinas Koyach, so what the Rebbe says here, if you want to look at it, and you want to dissect this, there's there's a arousal from below, from above, which inspires or gives permission for an arousal from below. That arousal from below, because it's so dear to Hashem, because it's our deeds, it therefore brings down, elicits another arousal from above. But in that Yisrus L'Leil, there's two levels, says the Rebbe in Harafoti. There's one that gets aroused through our deed. And even at that level, which is, if we can touch it, means it's a lower level, but even at that level, it's because it's coming from above after our deed, it's higher than the Yisrus L'Leil that preceded everything, because there's an element of Pnimis here, but it's Pnimius, it's an innermost level, but from a lower level. It's from a level where the deeds of the Tachtonim, of the created beings, the Yisrus L'Sata is able to touch it, to reach it. And then there's a second level in that arousal from above, the Yisrus L'Leil, comes after our deeds, which comes on its own. It's not drawn down, it's not pulled down. The only thing is that you need to create the whole scenario to be ready for this Or, and then Hashem beams it down on his own. And that's the penimius of the higher level of Hashem's shining down. And the Yisrus L'Sata, nothing you do from below can really touch that and pull it down. So the Rebbe says, Yeshlema, that the level of light that's drawn down through the Aved of Elul, which is Teshuva, it's like the second highest level we're just talking about. As we're going to speak a little bit later. So now says the Rebbe, continuing in the Pnim, even though the power to have this Aveda of Ani L'Dei turn to Hashem in Elul comes because of the revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy in Elul, nonetheless, So why are we talking about it on Pesach? Nonetheless, because everything has its special time when it starts, and that's when the main focus on that movement is. So the time generally of the movement of Yisrael Le'ela, arousal from above, generally speaking, that's the Pesach experience. As we said before, that's when Hashem swooped down and took out the Yidden even though they didn't deserve it. Shenken Elul, even though, yes, there's also an aspect where Hashem gives the power for Yid to come close to an Elul by coming out with a smiley face. But that's not the general mode of Elul. The general mode of Elul is still the upward motion, the us taking that opportunity and turning to Hashem. Similarly, so when it comes to what's coming up to us on Elul, really is sourced already and begins. That whole concept starts in Pesach. In other words, Pesach is the general father of Yisrus Le'ela times. It's the Eifen Kloli in a general way. That's Yisrus Le'ela mode. And from that we then get the detailed drawing downs by everything in its time. In Elul, it comes down in the Yud Gimel Sarachim, but it's sourced and it's, so to speak, its father, its beginning is the Hamshacha of Pesach. And that's why in the Sikha about Shams Varchim Elul, the Rebbe spoke about it on Pesach. Because the Sikha of Shams Varchim Elul is talking about everything about the month. Also, the fact that there's a permission granted. There's the beaming down of the Yud Gimel Tzarachim, the smiley countenance of the king. But it was said on Pesach because that's when that part of Elul takes place. So now we can understand. There, if we could understand Gimel, we'll understand now the four things that we discussed in describing Shas Varchim Elul. So in general, there's two parts to these four things. There's the first description of the light and the clarity of the rays of the sun. The first thing that the Rabbi uses as a description, where he says, even though there was still a klar zun shine and dikator, it was still a clear, sunny, sun-shining day. That's thing number one. That's in a class of its own. That's what's beaming down from above. And then we have the difference in the atmosphere, the difference in the air. It says the air changed already, and then it says there was already a smell of Elul, and then it says that the tshuva wind blew. So that's three things that belong to a second category. There's the sun shining first category, and the other three things, the air, the smell, and the wind. Why are there two things? What does that mean? Because the light and the ray of the sun become drawn down from above, which bipnimius in the inside meaning of that, it means the drawing down of shemesh havaya. The sun is just an analogy for the luminous light of Hashem, and that is still shining on Elul. That's drawn down in Elul. It's still as a continuation of what started in Nisan. And the other three things, they already refer to the particular mode of Elul where it's the created beings becoming awakened from above. They're becoming awakened through that sunshine, through that drawing down of Hashem's light that comes. Dalit. So b'shaychus to this eres, when we talk about, in connection to the awakening of the created beings, which is generated through the drawing down from above. So the Hida Rebbe says two things. The Elul Reach, already you felt the it says the Rebbe in Ark 22. He said that the what you call it, that the air changed, but actually that's an introduction to do these things. What do you mean the air and atmosphere changed? The next two things are, you felt the Elul smell and the Elul wind. Let's see, what does Reach and Ruach have to do with Elul and Tshuva, wind and smell? So the main thing about Teshuvah is that, as it says in the pasuk, Haruach, the spirit, Toshuv Elokim Eloshana, should go back to Hashem who gave it. In other words, the main thing of Teshuvah is to pick oneself up to a level of Ruach, of spirit, which is a higher level than air. It's a level in levels that's higher than light. It's going higher. In other words, says the Rebbe in Art 25, that through Teshuvah, in other words, you're going higher than the sunlight, which is air, which is light. Tshuva is the ruach. You're reaching a level of ruach, of wind. And when you reach that level, then you come back to Hashem. Toshuv Elokim, you come back to Hashem who gave it. And that is being hinted at by the Friedrich Rebbe when he says the tshuva wind, the wind of Teshuvah, talking about reaching the level of ruach. Because that's the main thing of Elul, Teshuvah. And now we understand why he talks about smell. Because the main Aveda of Anil and Daidi, turning to Hashem, is the Aveda of Teshuvah. What happens through Tshuva? Through Tshuva we get Mashiach. About Mashiach it says, Ruach Shel Mashiach, the spirit of Mashiach. But it says that uniquely about Mashiach there's a connection to smell. It says in the pasuk, "V'harichei beyiras havaya," which the Gemara says that he's going to judge. He's going to be tested out by seeing, can he judge with a smell? When people come to him, can he right away smell the situation? Who's guilty and who's innocent? So we see that the concept of Mashiach is related to smell. So the Rabbi here is saying that the smell, that the spirit of Elul is teshuvah. So that's about vint, ruach, reaching the higher level than light, going back to the place where Hashem, who gave us into this world, reaching back to our source of Hashem. And that leads us to Reach. That also means that we have a different kind of smell that ultimately leads us to the one who is identified by his unique smell, which is Mashiach. Hey, now as an introduction to these two things, both the Ruach of Teshuvah, the spirit of Teshuvah, and Reach, the smell of Elul, which through Teshuvah, which brings us to Mashiach. So the Friedrich Rebbe says, the air already changed. Why did he use the word air? Because here we'll see that air has a very unique quality to it. What's with air? When we talk about the needs of a person during life, there are several types. You need a house to be able to live in, you need clothing, you need food, you need drink, and you need air to be able to breathe. One is more important than the other. You mean with clothes, they're more important than a house, but even more important than clothes is food. Even more important than food is drink, and more important for them all is water. Interestingly enough, and these are ongoing requirements. Without air, it can't last for too long whatsoever. So since a person requires air so fundamentally, and generally speaking, a person is constantly breathing air. So we understand that when we want to talk about something that's there and it's available to everybody and everybody feels it always, you want to talk about the air. The air changed. You can't say the house changed in Elul. If you didn't go into the house, you didn't feel the change. The air changed. Everybody's breathing. Interesting, the Rebbe brings in a... let's continue the Pnim. And that's the Kavana, what the Rebbe says in the Sikha about the air. Since the Reach of Elul, the smell of Elul, and the Ruach of Tshuva, the spirit of Tshuva, are already to be felt in the changed air of Elul, that means to say that they're in a way of air which doesn't require any, generally speaking, air does not require any effort. As the Rebbe says in R32, that if you look in Chassidus, it points out that because air is so critical and so required, Hashem made it in a miraculous way that you don't have to buy it. It's there for everybody's taking. So by saying that the air of Elul was felt already, that means it's already something that's there for everybody. It doesn't require any special preparation. And that it's applicable and needed by every single person. And it actually enlivens every person, every neshama, with every breath. As we know that our sages tell us on the pasuk, Kol ha-neshama ta'al yudke haleluke. Every neshama, the last verse in Tehillim, every neshama will praise you. Praise be Hashem. Chazal said, I'll call neshima. For every breath we have to praise Hashem. So we're constantly breathing in and out. That air we're breathing in and out, says the Rebbe, in Elul, for everybody, it changes. And we now have access to tshuva. Talk about Mashiach. Right. So now I just want to go back quickly. The Rebbe said ha'orah here. 13. So we want to say that we talked about the month of Elul being Hashem shining down his shiny countenance, representing the 13 attributes of mercy. Then the Rebbe says that also the blowing of shofar, which we're going to do in Elul, is also an inyan of Yisrus Elul, also from above. Because what's the inyan of shofar? As it says in Amos, it says, "Mitoka shofar be'ir," can a shofar be blown in a city and the people don't get trembled? In other words, we can say, says the Rebbe, that it says not if you blow a shofar. It says, "Mitoka shofar." If a shofar is blown in the city, who's doing the blowing? It's blown of itself. We can say that this is a reference to the fact that this is a revelation from above, that, so to speak, it's blown from above. So what do we do? Why do we have to blow? Why can't we just wait for Hashem to blow? No, because when we're blowing, that's drawing down the blowing of Tkiyah that already Hashem has been blowing. And it says in the Kuti Diburim, says the Rebbe, that the first blowing of the month of Elul is an announcement that the gates of mercy have been opened. If that's what shofar is, what's the opening of the gates of mercy? That's Yisrus Leila, that's drawing down from above. So clearly, the month of Elul has two things. as the Sunshine and the Ketog, sunshine day, the drawing down from above. That's why it was said on Pesach, and it has the main agenda, and that's why we call it the month of Elul, starting from Ani L'Deidi, is that we get to do the Yisrus L'Eila, the Yisrus L'Sata, which then connects us to the highest levels of Yisrus L'Eila. First of all, the level of Pnimi Yisrael, and then the level of Pnimi Yisrael in the highest there, which really we can't reach, but once we have the setup prepared, Hashem beams it down upon us. A gut gebencht Jahr.